In today's tutorial, you will need 2 colors of weight for yarn, a 5mm hook, a darning needle, a button, and a pair of scissors. Also, here are some skills that you will need to know throughout the video, and don't fret if you don't know some of these because there are a bunch of helpful videos on YouTube. Start by taking your 5mm hook and your accent yarn for your heart and form a magic circle. We're going to do this by forming a little crisscross with the yarn, inserting our hook underneath the second bar, and then pulling the first bar underneath and flipping our hook and pulling the yarn through like this. So this is 1 chain, so chain 2 more times to get a total of 3. And this is going to count as a double crochet. Now double crochet 2 more into the circle and make sure you crochet over this little tail because it'll be very important later on. So our 3 double crochet is considered a shell, and what we're going to do is chain 2 and then insert another shell, which is 3 double crochets. Now you have your second shell, so chain 2 again and insert your third shell by double crocheting 3 into the circle. Chain 2 and make your last shell by double crocheting 3 into the circle. And once you're finished, chain 2 and pull the little string that we crocheted on top of to cinch the circle, and slip stitch into your first stitch in order to join the circle together. Now at this point you should have 4 shells and also 4 chain 2 spaces, and we're going to call these corners. So the next step is to chain 1, and in this chain 2 corner space we're going to double crochet 8 into that space. Now chain 1, and in the next chain 2 corner insert a single crochet, chain 1, and find the adjacent shell, which is the 3 double crochets, and in the middle shell, in the middle stitch right here, insert 2 single crochets into that stitch, chain 1, and insert 2 more single crochets in that same exact stitch. Chain 1, in the next corner space insert a single crochet, chain 1, and the last chain 2 corner space insert 8 double crochets. Chain 1. Now look for the first stitch that we slip stitch into in the beginning, and in that space you're going to slip stitch in order to make that heart shape. Finally, chain 1 and fasten off. So that is our heart, and now take the main color yarn, and I'll be using white, and form a slip knot with your yarn and insert it into your hook. Now in the bottom of your heart, look for the chain 1 that we did. If you remember, in our last round we did 2 single crochets, chain 1, and 2 single crochets in a single stitch. Now find that chain 1 and insert your hook and slip stitch to connect the yarn. And what we're going to do is very important, which is only crochet in the back loops. So you're going to single crochet in the back loop only of the first stitch. And instead of crocheting like we normally would, just through both loops, we're only going to go through the second loop through the top. Now half double crochet in the back loop only. Now double crochet in the next stitch. Treble crochet. Chain 2. Double crochet. Half double crochet. And single crochet 4 times. Now chain 2 and single crochet 4 more times. So your fourth single crochet should leave you in the middle of the heart, and you're going to find that place where you slip stitched, and you're going to insert a half double crochet into that space. Now tug your heart a little bit to reveal the hidden stitch that was covered by our half double crochet, and what you're going to do is single crochet 4 more times. Chain 2, single crochet 4 times, half double crochet, double crochet, chain 2, treble crochet, double crochet, half double crochet, single crochet, and join your first stitch with your current stitch with a slip stitch. Chain 3, and this counts as a double crochet, and in the same stitch you're going to add 2 double crochets. Chain 1, and in the corner stitch we're going to do something called a corner, which is a shell, so 3 double crochets, chain 2, and another shell of 3 double crochets. So whenever I say corner, this is what we're going to do. Now chain 1 and count 3 stitches from your corner, and in that third stitch we're going to insert a shell, which is 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and in the next chain 2 corner space you're going to add our corner pattern, which is again a shell, chain 2, and a shell. Chain 1, and look for the half double crochet we did in our last round, and on that stitch we're going to add another shell. chain 1, and this is a corner, which means we have to do our corner stitch of a shell, chain 2, shell. Chain 1, and I recommend pulling back your shell a little bit to reveal a hidden stitch, like this one. Once again, count 3, and on that third stitch, you're going to insert a shell. Chain 1, and I think you know the idea. Do our shell, chain 2 shell into that corner space. Chain 1 and slip stitch into our first stitch. Now the next row is going to be very simple, and we're just going to be repeating our shells and corners. Now slip stitch twice to reach one of our chain 1 spaces here. And every one of these chain 1 spaces that's not a corner, we're going to add a shell. So chain 3 and insert 2 double crochets into that space. And in between every shell and every corner, we're going to chain 1. And since this is a corner, we're going to do our shell, chain 2 shell pattern, and so on. And I'll meet you when we get to the end. At the end, chain 1 and slip stitch into your first stitch, chain 1, and then now you're ready to fasten off your granny square. So this is pretty much it for the granny square, and you're going to repeat this pattern until you get a total of 6. So I'm back with 6 of my heart granny squares, and I also took the next step of taking my darning needle and weaving in my ends, and this could be a step you do at the end, so it's not necessary at this point. So let me show you the general idea of what we're going to do. So with 4 of our granny squares, we're going to connect them like this into a larger square, and with our 2 remaining squares, we're just going to connect them by the side like this. So let me show you how to connect them in the first place. So take 2 of your granny squares and kind of sandwich them together right side facing each other. And take your 5mm hook, the same one you've been using, and also your working yarn, and again it's going to be white for me, and attach a slip knot into your hook. And what you're going to do is take your granny square and look for a corner, and in that corner look for a chain that is not a part of a stitch, and then insert your hook into that chain. Same thing for the back granny square. Look for a chain and insert your hook. And to connect your yarn to your work, slip stitch it all together. Now how we're going to connect our granny square is simple, it's just a single crochet, but it's also going to be a little different. So for our front panel granny square, we're going to insert our hook in the front loop only. And how to do that is insert your hook from the side, from the front, and only let your hook take the first loop. And then in the second granny square, insert your hook into the back loop only, just like we've done for our heart in our granny square, and then single crochet them together. Again, front loop only for our first granny square, and back loop only for our second granny square, and single crochet that together. So we're going to continue this pattern until we reach the end of our granny squares. Now that you have reached the end, take 2 more of your granny squares, and again, sandwich them together, right side facing each other, and kind of line them up with what you're working with already. And just like we did in the beginning, we're going to look for our chain, insert our hook into the first, and then do the same for our second granny square. And you will single crochet the 2 loops together, and this will successfully connect the 4 granny squares together. And what you're going to do is again do the front loop, back loop, single crochet pattern until you reach the end. And don't forget to fasten off when you finish. So this is what you should have, and we have this giant square here, and if you flip it over, this is what you should have for our single crochet connect pattern. And what we're going to do is the side that we did not do, so again, sandwich the right sides together and make sure you're working on the backward side of the granny squares. And again, we're going to repeat the front loop only, back loop only, single crochet connecting pattern, and I will meet you at the end. Now your work should look like this, and with your remaining 2 granny squares, you're just going to do the same thing by connecting the 2 sides together. Now take your 2 connected granny squares, flip them upside down, and place them beneath the 4 granny squares, and sandwich them right side up so that they kind of mirror the image below. And what you're going to do is connect them with our single crochet stitch. Don't forget to fasten off once you're at the end of your row. Now it definitely looks a little strange because one row of hearts is kind of backwards, but I assure you that it's correct. Now flip your 3x2 formation to the longer side, and what we're going to do is insert a slip knot into our hook. And of course, attach it with a slip stitch to a corner. Chain 3. And what we're going to do is just do regular double crochets along the whole row. And surprisingly, there's nothing fancy here. It's just going to be regular double crochets. And I will meet you once we get to the end of the row. At the end of the row, fasten off just like any other row, and we're going to repeat this whole thing, just double crochet on the other long edge of our work. So now that we have one row of double crochet on each long edge, turn your work so that only one row of your 2 granny square hearts is facing the right way, like this. And what you're going to do is, again, make a slip knot and attach it to your hook. And you're going to slip stitch that in the beginning of your row, and in our case it's going to be in the beginning of our double crochet row. And what we're going to do now is single crochet along the top of this row, and we're going to do this until we get to the end of our row. And fasten off when you finish. Now turn your work the other way and take your accent color yarn, I'll be using red, and attach it to the right edge of your work. Once you do so, chain 3. And what you will do for the rest of the row is to double crochet. On your last double crochet, only yarn over once and leave 2 loops on your hook and take your main color yarn and form a slip knot and put it on your hook and pull that through instead of your other yarn. This is how we're going to change colors. Now cut your accent yarn and with your main yarn, chain 3 and start a new row of double crochet. At the end of your row, chain 3, turn your work, and this is where we're going to add our buttonhole. So fold your work in half and take your stitch marker, and what we're going to do is stitch the middle of our work and then unfold the work and double crochet until you reach the stitch marker. Once you reach the stitch marker, chain 1 and skip over that stitch marked by the stitch marker altogether and double crochet into the next stitch. And keep double crocheting until you reach the end of your row. And once you do so, fasten off and remove your stitch marker from your work. So sadly, I lost my clips for this next step, so please bear with my terrible drawing skills as I try to explain as best as I can. So what we're going to do is flip our bottom row upwards, and this is going to form a 2x2 with all the hearts aligning the same way, and the bottom row should kind of overlap. And what we're going to do is use our single crochet front loop back loop method to stitch the 2 overlapping granny square sides together, and hopefully the next clip shows a better visual representation. So this is what your work should look like, and make sure to flip your work inside out. And this will serve as the bottom of our book sleeve, super cute. So the last step is to attach our button to our work, and I'll be using this adorable button, and please be careful with how you align your button so that it matches with your buttonhole, and I'll be using a darning needle for this. Once you have finished, the last and final step is to take your darning needle and weave in all the loose ends in the inside of your work. And that's it. Congrats for completing your Pinterest-inspired book sleeve. Definitely one of the cutest things I've ever made, and it's also the perfect gift and something that you can make for yourself that you can use on the daily. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Don't forget to like, subscribe for more content like this.